a disclaimer. Number one, that's bright. I am not a trained public speaker, so I have notes and I rely on them. And this is about a 1.5 hour talk. So I crammed it into 18 minutes, so I don't want to miss anything. I'll bet it's fair to say, looking over this group, that most of you, if not all of you, know what fair trade is and are very familiar with coffee and chocolate. Most of you probably have it at your churches. We're all familiar with the struggles that coffee growers have of getting a fair price for their beans. We also understand the struggle that cocoa growers and harvesters with forced labor and child labor. But I'll bet it's also fair for me to say that once you go beyond chocolate and coffee with fair trade, it gets a little fuzzy. So what I hope today happens is, with my talk, that we can clear out some of that fuzz and hopefully intentionally raise the bar of fair trade within the church, which really needs to happen. A quick little history of where we come from. My wife Lois and I, both born and raised Lutheran. Both of our mothers were very involved in LCW, which became ELCA. My father is a retired LCA pastor in Ohio. He's 95 now. And we both attended and graduated from Wittenberg University, and my family has a long history back at Wittenberg, so we're good Lutherans. But for many years, we sold chocolate and coffee, fair trade chocolate and coffee at our church in Fairfax, and then kind of graduated into doing consignment from Serve in 10,000 villages during Advent and Lent. But then when we start thinking that, okay, every Sunday we throw that check into the offering plate and we make the mad dash at the end of the year to write those checks for the tax write-off to World Hunger and Gifts of Hope and Heifer Project. But something was missing. It just didn't feel right that we hurry up and do that and then we're kind of done for the year. We seem to be called to do something else. That kind of coincided with my turning age 50, 8 years ago. And my wife allowed me a controlled midlife crisis. There were conditions. Number one, I could not quit my job. Number two, I could not buy a sports car that only seated 2. And if I was going to do anything, it had to be productive and worthwhile. At the time, our daughter was attending College of the Atlantic up in Bar Harbor, Maine. So we decided, hey, how about if we just open up a little fair trade store in Bar Harbor, run it during the summer, and see what happens. So we did. So, 8 years later, we now have 7 stores around the country. We also own a wholesale fair trade linen business based out of Jaipur, India. And Lois and I both have our full-time jobs. We have a lot of family members who are doing this with us. We have our daughter and our niece work for us full-time out in Seattle. My sister-in-law, my sister, our 2 sons and their girlfriends are all in the business with us, called Fair Trade Winds. Okay, so let's see. It's always good to start off with a quote from Martin Luther. So, his explanation of the 7th commandment, thou shalt not steal, from his small catechism. We should fear and love God, and so we should not rob our neighbor of his money or property, nor bring them into our possession by dishonest trade or by dealing in shoddy wares, but help him to improve and protect his income and property. The guy is a major fair trader, and he really hits the nail on the door, the nail on the head, by saying this. Oh, I'm glad someone got that. Good. So, let's go back a little further, and we could see what Isaiah has to say. In Isaiah 58, verses 2 through 6, why do we fast, but you do not see? Why humble ourselves, but you do not notice? So the people of God are really like complaining here, guys. Come on, God, what's wrong with you? Why don't you recognize what we're doing? And the answer is, look, you serve your own interest on your fast day and oppress all your workers. So the injustice to the poor is built into the structure of our society, into the way we trade, consume, and live. Often we buy something, whether we know it or not, we are guilty of an injustice. Trade injustice in the 21st century aligns with Isaiah's concerns. Wealthy societies benefit from trading with the global poor. We eat their produce, we buy their goods, and we use their resources. However, we don't realize that our everyday actions directly contribute to the oppression and exploitation of millions of people. In fact, we are bombarded every day with ads for products that tell us the opposite. They tell us they're good for us, they'll make us happy, and they'll make our lives better. But at whose expense? Isaiah speaks to us that we need to focus on being just, compassionate, and committed to non-exploitative relationships. We are called to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. The bonds of injustice, they are tight. Nelson Mandela says, overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity, but an act of justice. The International Labor Organization estimates that roughly 6 million children work in forced labor conditions. Nearly half of the world's population lives on less than $2.50 a day. More than 1.3 billion live on less than $1.25 a day. Extreme poverty results in malnutrition, disease, limited access to clean water, health care, and education, and many more complex problems due to powerlessness. So really, we are the ones with the hand on that yoke. Isn't it time that we lessen that pressure? Fair trade is justice in action. Fair trade producers are paid enough to cover the cost of sustainable production plus the value of their work in wages and salary. This enables them to provide for themselves, their families, and their communities. And to paraphrase Nelson Mandela, fair trade is not a gesture of charity, but an act of justice. Psalm 99 tells us God loves justice. Buying fair trade products and campaigning to make fair trade fair allows all of us to be a part of bringing justice to the world. Everyday purchases are an extension of our faith. This is putting our faith into action, but how can you really be sure? Fair Trade Federation members follow these principles. Fair Trade Federation, I'll back up a second. Fair Trade Federation is a trade organization based in Wilmington, Delaware. There are about 250 members. We're included in that. It consists of retailers, wholesalers, coffee roasters, all with a US-based business. In order to become a member of Fair Trade Federation, you must in great detail answer the 9 principles that we follow. Pay promptly and fairly, assure children's rights and education, create opportunity, build capacity, promote fair trade, promote safety and health for families and communities, transparency in the supply chain, encourage environmental stewardship, and respect cultural identity. And I could spend probably a half an hour on each one, but there are 2 of them that I want to point out, and that is create opportunity and build capacity. Creating opportunity is a strategy for poverty alleviation and sustainable development. Members build trading partnerships with marginalized producers. They work together to develop products, building a sustainable business. Building a business model for the long term is the primary concern for everyone. When you build capacity, artisans and farmers are focused on improving their skills and their access to markets. Members who are wholesalers work directly with producers, building capacity through proactive communication, financial and technical assistance, market information, and dialogue. Members who are retailers, like us, we build capacity by figuring out ways to bring more customers into buying fair trade and to grow the number of retail stores. Uh-oh. Oh, I'll skip that and go back. Little by little, a little becomes a lot. This is really an awesome Tanzanian proverb. Make sure I get it right here. Sorry, guys. Fair trade is not a traditional big idea meant to solve the world's problems overnight. Instead, it is a process. It's an accumulation of individuals all working toward long-term sustainable development, building businesses, and opening up markets in the West. Fair trade partners. Fair trade is a system of people that only works if everyone does their part. These are people, the people in this picture are actual wholesalers that we work with in our Fair Trade Wins retail business. These are people that we have come to know that we have been working in fair trade for a long time. They are our direct link to the artisans and have dedicated their whole lives to making sure that artisans' lives matter. They have switched careers, they have risked their lives, and they have fully committed themselves to building the future of fair trade. They represent countries from all over the world, and without them, the system would not work. Fair trade is a huge cooperative effort that we need to grow. So we have representatives of India, Nepal, Indonesia, Guatemala, Kenya, and the top right, the two women in the top right, Kristen and Renee, they own a company called Global Mamas based out of Ghana. So I'll have an example here of the Global Mamas story. So you can meet the mamas. This started in 2003 with 6 mamas, and they are Alice, Elizabeth, Emma, Esther, Hannah, and Florence, and they are pictured in the various pictures there. These 6 women owned small businesses in Ghana, and they went home every night to care for their children without electricity, without running water, with no microwaves, no refrigerators, no frozen dinners to throw in, and no washing machines. So Kristen and Renee started working with these people in Ghana, these 6 women in Ghana, in 2003. So 12 years later, there are now almost 600 people employed through these 6 women. Each mama, which we call them now, each mama earns on an average 75% more than the minimum wage in Ghana. Each earn on average 30% more than the average worker in the same industry in Ghana. There are 116 mama business owners, and they each employ an average of 2 more women. Each woman employed by Global Mamas cares for several family members. Each Global Mamas employee spends money in her larger community on education, food, and health care. This increases the positive impact. This is sustainable justice in action. How did this happen? Only by their ability to access Western markets with you and me purchasing those products. Fair trade is not just about the money. So again, being a member of Fair Trade Federation, the producers, the wholesalers who work with the producers and the artisans around the world do a lot more than just make sure that they get a fair wage. They put together health forums on nutrition, breast cancer, menopause, and communicable diseases. They invest in modern facilities with a vision toward future expansion. They offer interest-free loans for equipment, housing needs, healthcare, and education. How does fair trade address global poverty? Conventional trade is focused on producing a product at the lowest cost possible. Fair trade is focused on paying dignified wages and producing a product competitively. Conventional trade is not a partnership with producers. Fair trade develops partnerships to break the cycle of poverty by working cooperatively with our artisans to achieve their goals that include sending their children to school, buying new equipment, and paying for health care. Conventional trade leaves no room for upward mobility. Fair trade empowers artisans and farmers so that they can lift themselves out of poverty and not rely on charitable handouts and foreign aid. It is not so much about us sending our checks, but creating markets for their products here in the West. What other faith communities do? More than 4,000 churches in the UK have declared themselves fair trade congregations. I'm going to go faster here, so I only have 3.5 minutes left. All right. So we are way behind what most of the other parts of the world are doing in terms of fair trade. Be inspired to do more. Where did I go here? I missed a slide. All right, we're losing one. Not sure what happened to this one. Be inspired to do more. Go beyond coffee and chocolate on Sunday. There's clothing for women, men, and children. There are scents, soaps and spices, toys, home decor, and furniture. There's jewelry, there's textiles, there's shoes, there's underwear, there's hats, there's beddings, there's towels, and my niece found there are even fair trade coffins. So we need to create a fair trade section on the ELC and Synod websites. Fair trade should be a global mission priority. We can join fair trade campaigns, become a fair trade town, university, congregation, and school. Every ELC congregation should be part of the movement. Currently, there are 3. We need your partnership and your leadership. Oh, there it is. It came back. Fair trade depends on all of us. There are opportunities for the ELC to provide leadership. Increase the number of congregations participating in fair trade programs through Equal Exchange, Serve, and fair trade congregations. Raise awareness of trade injustice in all product markets. Assist congregations in encouraging the growth of fair trade in their communities. Also, collaborative opportunities with fair trade wins. Educate and raise awareness to any age group. Holiday and regularly scheduled fair trade sales. We pack and travel and go anywhere. You can sell certain products that meet a mission or a goal of your congregation. We give back 10% of what we sell during a sale back to you to use for whatever you need. The impact of fair trade wins. We have 7 stores around the country. We represent 57 countries. We have 45 people who work for us in our 7 stores. Last year, in 2014, we sold 138,625 individual products, everything from a $2 candy bar to a $300 silver necklace from Laos. We have 142 organizations represented in our stores. So, focus on the big idea. The ELC needs to be an active leader in promoting fair trade. And if it'll work, I have to close a 2-minute video from one of our wholesalers called Andy and Collection.